Welcome to BW Healthcare World. Pharma industry has been growing by leaps and bounds. One of the companies that has progressed is AstraZeneca. Today we have with us Mr. Gagandeep Singh Bedi, who is the Managing Director of AstraZeneca Pharma India, who also serves as its country head. Mr. Bedi is also the head of matured markets at AstraZeneca, responsible for the global portfolio and the product performance. He also serves as the country president of AstraZeneca Philippines since 2012. Welcome to BW Healthcare, Mr. Gagandeep Singh Bedi. You know, India has achieved a competitive advantage in the global generic drug industry. It's been seen as a premium producer and supplier of quality drugs. And you mentioned in one of your recent interactions that our pharma industry is currently, which is around 42 billion, and out of which you said 24 billion is focused on export. And this number has the potential to be 3x or 4x. So my first question to you is, what will help the Indian pharma industry to get that boost?
Thanks. So specifically, if I talk about the domestic market today, which is our major area of interest, is about 20 to 22 billion US dollars. But if you really rank ourselves globally, we're the 12th largest market. And if you see ourselves in terms of volume, then we are third largest. So if you see, one of the things then is pretty obvious. What will take us forward is, as we grow up the value chain, we'll start seeing and we'll be growing faster than most other markets. And therefore, you can expect a very, very significant traction towards that goal of getting to 2x or 3x in the next 8 to 10 years. Now, how do you move up that value chain is going to be really critical, because that's at the confluence of macro tailwinds, which are like the technological disruption which is happening in health, the government policy and support which is beginning to start taking shape. And what I believe in the next 8 to 10 years is going to happen is we're going to see more and more coverage of treatments coming under Ayushman Health, as well as our middle class also getting into Ayushman Health. So when you have technological disruptions which are going to basically squeeze time from what would have happened in decades would start happening in years, and we don't need to really build the brick and mortar model. And on these technological highways, we can deliver healthcare outcomes across the country. Added to that, there is paying capacity, which is because of the government's coverage on Ayushman Bharat. The third aspect is the more urban India and higher healthcare insurance penetrations, which we are beginning to see, and especially a big trend post-COVID as well. So that is, again, something which will be a very significant driver for growth as well. And lastly, I'll potentially say is, I think we are turning the corner around non-communicable diseases, especially diseases like diabetes, where we've seen very, very significant improvements either in devices which help with continuous glucose monitoring, or in terms of drug therapy, which has improved. So both lifestyle changes as well as drug therapies are getting changed there. Similarly, in our battle against cancer, we seem to be turning the corner from at least trying to push the disease into an early diagnosis and more chronic treatment than late diagnosis leading to virtually just about few months of treatment or a few years of treatment. So I think if you put all of this together, I mean, there are some serious tailwinds which we can ride as a country and really deliver. And lastly, I'll potentially say is the opportunity we have. While we've been doing very well as a pharmacy of the world, Harbinder, but I think the opportunity now is to move up on and become the research cradle of the world as well. And I think that's a huge opportunity. Recently, in our agenda and conversations with the government, where we had it on the FICCI platform, one of our suggestions is exactly this. And in the 75th year of our independence, we've become today the pharmacy of the world, and we have an opportunity in the 100th year to become really the hub for R&D, and especially India's ability to combine both medicine as well as alternative medicine, as well as do it at a fraction of a cost what the world delivers in. We could be a great hope not only for our country. Our R&D would be hope for even the developing world, and we saw that some of the examples with our development in the vaccines and others, very affordable innovation. So if you put all of this together, I think India moves up its value chain, and we'll be on a significant growth path as an industry there.
When you look at the pharma industry, a lot of the growth also depends on the reforms that happen from the government side. So what are the reforms that we have seen within the pharma industry in India that have brought us to this glory? And what are the reforms that we seek from the policymakers of India for making pharma the next big hub for even the R&D?
Yeah, so I think that's really a very good question, because that's where the bulk of effort sits, because the government needs to redefine from being what I call as a manufacturing hub for pharmaceutical drugs to researching for pharmaceutical drugs. So there are great reforms which happen, and they are happening right now, but a lot of them are aimed at continuing to be great at manufacturing. So as an example, the PLI schemes, the production linked incentive schemes. Now, those are the potential schemes which are giving us now the opportunity to really indigenize APIs. A lot of APIs were imported into India. So there's an opportunity now to indigenize, given the production linked incentive. In the past, where we are also because of the pharma parks which were set up, and we saw whether it's in the tax support and other kind of things which happened. Both SEZs for IT as well as pharma parks have helped deliver this. But as we move forward, we need to deliver on policy reforms with R&D. And the whole R&D journey is not a unidimensional incentive-linked solution also, because while you need research-linked incentives, because it is a high-risk play to do pharma R&D in innovation. It costs a lot of money, especially the clinical development of the drugs, and then there are huge attritions as well. So while you need linked incentives, but you need an ecosystem to succeed, because you need talent and skill to feed into it, which is where you need the partnerships with academia. We're beginning to see some of that by the government as well. Research linked incentive is something which government is very keen about as well. We've seen with Indian Institute of Science some of the efforts towards academia partnerships coming through, but we need more and more of that as well. And I think finally you need stronger IPR, because at the end of the day there's an incentive enough that you have significant patent protection to available for anyone to invest and anyone to really develop drugs in the country. Then it comes along with data protection and other kind of things. So if you look at it, all in all, you develop an ecosystem and you invest in that ecosystem, I'm sure the results would be fantastic, but it is not as linear as probably what you see in the production space.
Gaganji, we've seen when you talk to the people, when you talk to government, etc., the intent has always been there. They've always focused on the R&D badhana chahiye. There has to be focus on R&D, etc. But what, according to you, have been the bottlenecks when it comes to R&D? why have the private sector not invested in R&D in India?
So I think I would break R&D into two parts. Part one, we do fairly well. So which is about incremental innovation. For example, developing, to give you an example, where you're taking two pills, we can combine them into one. So fixed dose combinations, India is probably the capital of the world when it comes to fixed dose combinations. We're pretty much willing to do. I think where we've tended to lag behind is in developing new chemical entities. And probably that's where your question is. So why do we do incremental so well? We do incremental so well because the returns are pretty obvious. You combine two drugs into one, there's a ready market to it. You do a clinical development program and you're able to then commercialize that opportunity pretty rapidly. But when it comes to developing of new chemical entities, it's not just about you. You got to look at the entire ecosystem across the globe, who's developing this science as well, where they are, where you are. And last bit is the whole incentivization has not been there. I mean, to give you a context, India's largest selling drug, which is a patented drug, it was for diabetes, and the patent expired last month, but was about 1,000 crores. At that at that size and scale of the business, it's very hard to imagine to invest behind 500 million to $1 billion, which is usually the case with the development of new chemical entity. So I think that is one of the bigger challenges as well, that how do you really incentivize R&D and allow for scale as well within the country.
So when we look at healthcare delivery, tech is playing a very important role. And we see the similar kind of a role happening in the field of genomics when it comes to pharmaceutical. How do you see the healthcare delivery change in the face of this development? And more specifically, how will the pharma industry build its competitive advantage using genomics when we look at India?
Yeah, so I think one of the things we're seeing pharmaceutical industry deliver is a lot of innovation, and that is on back of significant progress that the science has made, and a lot of is driven out of genomics. Now, one of the things with genomics is that we're able to deliver precision medicine, which essentially simply explained that we are able to target the right tumor cell, rather than the chemotherapeutics of the past, which had within very, very significant side effects because it wasn't targeted to the exact tumor cell. The other bit is we're able to deliver higher doses because of the management of side effects in these precision medicine. I think the other aspect of it is what we've also seen is the development of immuno-oncology come through. And that again is essentially redefining the way treatments are delivered. The third aspect of it is that we are now being able to pick up, the underlying genetics behind rare diseases and are able to deliver specific, drugs based on those genetics of the rare diseases. So one of the things you're increasingly seeing is more and more drug outputs against rare diseases because of the fact that we've been able to pick it up in the science. I'll give you a classic example of one of our own drugs, which was you had so about 15% of women in breast carcinoma have BRCA mutation, and this was essentially only way was to pick it up through genetics and then undergo a preventive surgery. That was the only available treatment. But because of the development, like as I said, of the genomics and the science behind it, we could develop a targeted therapy in olaparib there. And that has given hope to a significant number of women who get diagnosed with BRCA mutation. So you can pick up a specific mutation, you can develop a drug, you can deliver precision medicine with good quality of life. That's the benefit of genomics.
So let's bring my focus to cancer. Why do you think we are seeing an increase in the cancer cases in India? Is it because there is more detection happening? People are going in for diagnostics more often? Or is it because more people are now getting affected because of this disease?
Yeah, I think bit of both. And that's why we are seeing an exponential increase. I mean, if we go back a decade or 2 decades back, our own, oncology ecosystem was very restricted to top 7 or 8 metros, and people had to travel long distances for their either diagnosis or treatment as such. So I think the sheer fact that successive governments have invested very significantly behind oncology. Today in the national cancer grid, you have close to about 170 facilities in the country which are available and tied to national cancer grid, who have capabilities to detect as well as treat. So I think that has been a very, very big driver of why we are seeing this. The second aspect of it is that, look, as we transcend ourselves from, particularly rural India in the last couple of decades, urban did it before, from communicable to non-communicable diseases, we're living longer. And as we live longer, we're getting detected with diseases as well, so like cancer. And of course, can't take away environmental factors away, which are as an example, the urban pollution or sedentary lifestyle, obesity, which are contributing to higher incidence of the carcinoma as well. And eventually, the last bit is, I would say, is also because of what we just discussed about, genomics and others. We are able to specifically pick up and diagnose much better in terms of what's happening within a diagnostic lab as well, because of the science, the way it's evolved.
Gaganji, I mean, we know that until now we have not found a cure for cancer. But do you think the development that has taken place in terms of early detection of cancer, as well as with the precision medicine coming in because of the growth of genomics, are we heading to a situation where less number of people will die because of cancer, or maybe they'll have a better lifestyle while they survive? What is your opinion on this?
No, absolutely. I'm very excited. I think we are really, really turning the corner in our battle against this dreadful disease. I've been associated with cancer for the last longest time of couple of decades, and I have seen how where conversations would talk about 5 to 10% survival because we were detecting so late, and from months to we're detecting early. We're talking about 70-80% survival, and survival which is running into years, particularly in some of the difficult to treat cancers as well. So if you really look at it, I think the underlying factors of having access to better diagnostics, diagnosing early, as well as treatment being available, people don't give up on their treatment because they have to travel long distances, is also helping deliver very, very good outcomes when you compare it to past. Are we still there? Yeah, when we compare ourselves to West, we still have a way to go, but I think we're already on the move. And the last bit, like I said, we today have been able to develop precision medicines or immuno-oncology as a area where we are really, really having targeted therapies, which in turn are helping us in our battle against carcinoma, and patients are living longer once they're on those drugs.
You just mentioned that, while we have developed a lot, we still have a lot to do before we can match the West. Now, in terms of technology, in terms of treatment, in terms of medication, I don't think India is lagging behind. So is it the acceptance of treatment or acceptance of the way the prognosis, is there something lacking from the receiver's end?
Well, look, again, I mean, I wouldn't go to that route of the receiver alone. I think the diseases need ecosystems to support them. Once you're diagnosed, it's not about just about the physician and the drug and the treatment. It's all about how are you doing in terms of your ability to understand the disease, how well you are explained on nutrition and other kind of things. Look, we can't shy away from the fact that we are a 1.4 billion country with 2,500 odd oncologists, which are medical, radiation, and others. So our hands are tied. Our physicians have a huge workload on them. And so their ability to really lift at the receiver's understanding of the disease and the treatment and the whole psychological support they need in this treatment may not be as optimum as what you see in the West. Of course, the positive thing today is you increasingly see, celebrities come out and talk about it. It's no more just let's just keep it to our drawing room, but we don't bring it out. But they're happy to talk about it. And I think one very, very important aspect of it is that increasingly what we're seeing is 10 years back, any celebrity who was diagnosed would head to West to get treated. And all of us would wonder that, oh, is that treatment which is best? And in India, we don't get. But increasingly now you're seeing, people getting treated, and there are a recent example of a Bollywood celebrity who's taking his treatment and has been very vocal about it, within the country as well. So that's again infusing a lot of confidence in people, saying, look, we can, we get world-class treatment to exactly what your point said. We've got everything right. It's just that we don't have enough hands and enough time to deliver that.
Very valid, sir. Now, let me come to AstraZeneca. Is there a conscious shift in the focus on oncology treatment by AstraZeneca recently?
Look, we have a very, very stated strategy on focusing on 4 different key areas. Oncology is one of them, but we're also very focused on CVRM, which is cardiovascular, renal, and metabolics. And we've delivered some of the most, treatment redefining data in the past 2 years. We've also very conscious about this whole challenge of increasing urban pollution as well as management of the respiratory diseases, and that's our key focus area again. And lastly, of course, rare diseases. Again, for a country of our size, rare disease sometimes is not as rare what it would be in a smaller country, and therefore, again, our key focus area is around that. So if you look at it, we're pretty balanced across, but yeah, the underlying theme is non-communicable diseases. All of these are, and we're focusing them entirely. What has happened in oncology has been that there's been a great throughput of science led developments, and it's been an industry-wide phenomena. What we saw in the last 20 years, probably we're seeing in the last 5 years in terms of clinical development and the data which is coming out. I mean, to give you a context, we invest very, very significantly in clinical development in India, and we have close to about 40 ongoing clinical development trials within the country. We work across about 200 centers, of which oncology forms almost 30 of them. And that's largely because of the fact that there've been more and more clinical development opportunities there rather than a conscious decision towards oncology.
So my next question would have been that keeping in mind the clinical trials and clinical development that is happening, are there any upcoming cancer drugs that we can expect from the AstraZeneca family soon?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll break it into what is really important is hope for the patients, given the fact that some of these drugs have multiple indications. So there could be a drug already available in the market, but the indication not being available. But as we develop that indication, so the use case is you have a drug which is very good, let's say in a cancer like lung, but still being studied for pancreatic carcinoma, and then you get the data there. But that's again like new clinical development which happens, and a lot of hope. So just to kind of give you a context, what excites us most today is, for example, in HER2 positive metastatic breast cancer. Now there again, there is a lot of disease progression which continues to happen very significantly, and we've been able to develop a drug with trastuzumab as well as duradexin combination, which is basically in HER2 as a brand, which very recently in ASCO got a standing ovation because it was giving hope to patients which had low HER2 positive as well. So this was one of those significant cohort of patients which didn't have hope, but with this drug now have a very, very significant hope. Our large probably focus has been around transforming the survival, which is basically our clinical strategy objective. And that's where we continue, Harbinder, to focus on development of our own clinical trial. I mentioned about olaparib a while back and talked about the BRCA mutation. Now, again, if you look at ovarian cancer as an example, it is the third most common cancer among women in India. And there's a huge unmet clinical need of a well-tolerated novel therapeutic agent, which can really have. And today there are hardly any opportunities or treatments which are available. And when you start looking at the treatment with olaparib, both in maintenance as well as post chemotherapy, you clearly see that what level of data which is getting delivered. You're talking about progression-free survival of 50 months, and still being studied forward. So some of that is going to be very, very important from an AstraZeneca perspective. We're doing and lastly, I just wanted to kind of give you a flavor also on, we're doing a lot of work around lung. So we started, 4 years back in really addressing in late stage lung diseases, stage 4, second line, where we had, osimertinib position. But increasingly what we've today has as a portfolio to offer is really with an intent to cure, where we also talking about very early stage 1 to stage 3, where we have immuno-oncology drug durvalumab position. And then we've also got in first line for specific mutation like EGFR, which is almost good 35-40% of the patients in India who have that mutation. We now have osimertinib there as well. And then even in early stages of 1 to 3, we've got opportunity with osimertinib. So if you really look at it, we've definitely moved the needle when it comes to lung, and we've got offerings which are pretty early at the disease state, and that is delivering very, very significant progression-free survival. So at AstraZeneca, this is just a flavor of what really excites us when it comes to oncology.
So have you also done some partnerships when it comes to development of cancer drugs?
Yes. So as an example, I talked about Enhertu. Now Enhertu is in partnership with Daiichi Sankyo. So these have been global partnerships which have helped deliver these drugs, both either in R&D or in clinical development. Similarly, we've also partnered with Merck Sharp Dohme when it comes to olaparib. While we developed it, but we had a late stage partnership with them where they are exploring combining this drug with other potential immuno-oncology drugs to really deliver this across. And the third aspect is we continue to, at a global level, also partner with emerging companies as well as therapeutics to see what could be very, very exciting coming up in future as well.
Right. So I want to ask you one thing, that when you are doing clinical trials for oncology, in the past, has there been an instance where the base, that clinical trial also becomes a base for another treatment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think repurposing of drugs is quite a common phenomenon. Not all COVID vaccines were ever designed for COVID, and most of them were repurposed for the purpose. So, I mean, and similarly, when you come to oncology, because that's where your specific question is, you tend to look at biomarkers which are driven trial in one oncology indication to form a base of another drug in other indications where same biomarker is present. So similarly, you can have it. I mean, and a classic example is, cytotoxic oncology drugs are used as immunosuppressive treatments in autoimmune diseases. So very clearly, you can have applications and repurposing of some of these.
So, Gaganji, you're responsible for India, and you also have a huge responsibility of Philippines. Now, specific to India, what are some of the roadblocks that you have found while scaling AstraZeneca in India?
Thanks. So I think, like I said at the start, we're emerging as a country from really saying, look, we're a powerhouse when it comes to manufacturing. And most multinationals, including AstraZeneca, have played very limited part in really, contributing there, because the local domestic industry was quite significant at that point of time to really deliver on those objectives. So that's been something which has happened. But I think when you start looking at future, I think that's where you really look at what part AstraZeneca or most multinationals can play, is moving us up the value chain in terms of capabilities. Now, if you look at the capabilities we've brought in the country, are significant investments behind R&D, significant investments behind data and other inciting roles, as well as technological part of it. I mean, not many people know, but one of the reasons why we could deliver COVID vaccine in record time is because our IT center up in Chennai was working, day and night to crunch some of the clinical data and support the global organization in delivering this drug in a record time. So India plays a very, very critical role in AstraZeneca's this thing. Now, the challenges that we face in terms of scale up is potentially, one is that we're looking at more and more regulatory support in terms of intellectual property rights that can really help us bring more and more drugs into the country. In terms of supporting tiered pricing, because till the time health is still an out of pocket kind of a play, what you really need is tiered pricing in the country, because there are parts of the country which really need the drug at a very, very low price, but there are parts of the country which can help in cross subsidizing some of that. So therefore, a tiered pricing model could be very, very significant support and help in terms of creating a long runway for most companies. And I think the third aspect of it is, like as I said, more and more research linked incentives, which can also help us get more attention from global and bring in more critical jobs into the country as well.
Gaganji, would you want to share something about the new CDI division of your institution in Bengaluru?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, the clinical data and insights team is, largely responsible for management of data-related aspects of AstraZeneca's clinical trials, and they are working across therapeutic areas and portfolios, and essentially looking at the patient journey, on a disease, and trying to extract insights out of it. And today we've got close to about 60 plus strong teams of scientists who are helping us gain in terms of in-depth visibility on these patient journeys. So I'm very excited about some of this contribution which we'll be making towards global R&D.
So Gaganji, before I let you go, my last question to you is that what is your goal of AstraZeneca in the coming years, and what is it? What is going to be your focus for AstraZeneca, and how do you plan to achieve it?
So I think if you just said, tell me in one word or a sentence, I would say patient centricity. I think the reason and the purpose of our existence is our patients. And I see a massive opportunity in this country as we translate what's available in global innovation to adapting in India. So our own goal is to make a patient, conversation move away purely from treatment to outcome. And if I can achieve that in the next 4 to 5 years, where they are paying for an outcome rather than just paying for a treatment and then hoping, I think we would have really moved the needle and achieved our goals in the country. So we continue to work for that purpose with access, in making sure that people have access to drugs, and then working along with the leading institutions. We're trying to work out and create ecosystems across disease and across therapeutic areas, so which just does not deliver a treatment experience, but delivers a complete holistic management of the disease as well. So that is where our key focus areas are. And just before I go, some of the examples there are really, really very inspiring, what the team has been able to put together in the last 4 to 5 years, whether it's our campaign around Ganga Godavari, where we're traversing the two largest rivers and the two largest civilizations our country has seen around these two rivers, and raising the awareness of women cancer, and it's so inspiring to see that. And along with that, tying it up with a complete treatment closure for patients who do get diagnosed, but more importantly, raising the awareness of regular checkups as well as disease. The other aspect of it is what we do in terms of really creating an ecosystem. For example, what we've done in diabetes is we've created a holistic virtual clinic which surrounds a patient. So not only just he gets to interact with an endocrinologist or a diabetologist, but he's also interacting with nutritionists. He's also interacting with other experts, and really getting a holistic treatment which is available to him. And it's all done at no other extra cost to him, because it's all delivered virtually, and we're doing it. So the whole idea is that he starts thinking outcome. You don't treat for HbA1c today, you treat for what would happen to you in 10 years if you were not to manage your HbA1c today or your lifestyle today. And some of those interventions, 10 years, 20 years out, if the patient starts owning, I don't think we have to ever motivate him for treatment. He will be motivated to participate in his own treatment. So that's just, I wanted to give you a flavor of how we're trying to move the needle.
No, I think this is brilliant, because every time we have a conversation related to healthcare, everything boils down to accessibility and affordability. But the statement that you make, that if we just focus on the patient paying for an outcome and not just for treatment, I think that sums it up. Gagan, I really want to thank you for taking out time to speak with us at BW Healthcare World. I really appreciate your time. I really enjoyed the conversation with you.
Thanks, Harbinder. I appreciate it.